How to make a Riri from Romantic Killer doll. The next 5 pics are just a brief overview and finally the ingredients. And now I'll try to explain my process. So I didn't take any video of the making process, but I did take a lot of progress pictures. So I'll try to explain to the best of my ability what was going on here. So basically here, I was trying to make a hidden pocket. I'm not gonna teach you how to do that because I ended up taking it out later and it's not really necessary. If you wanna make one, you can search a tutorial about pockets. But basically you cut out big oval shape, egg shape that's a little bit flatter on the bottom than rounder at the top. So here's my oval shaped body pattern while sketching the face on a separate scrap paper, and made sure to keep in mind how the edges of the body were going to appear to shrink or get pulled back when we go from that flat pattern to a 3D stuffed object. I took note of other objects that would limit the size of the face, like the hat and the front of the cape. I also folded my face pattern in half to match up with the body center line to help with symmetry and alignment. After measuring and comparing the face in proportion to the body, I took this close-up photo with the ruler in frame so that when I opened it in an editor, I could scale my final digital picture to the actual size. I used Paint Tool SI and Photoshop to digitally trace the face to ensure smooth and symmetrical lines. When I was done, I even held up my sketch to the computer screen to see if everything got spaced correctly. I just need a vague general facial expression. You can give Riri whatever face you want, and if you don't have a vinyl cutter or access to iron-on vinyls, you can easily draw the face with a fabric paint or fabric markers. So once you have the face either painted or drawn or ironed onto one of your body pieces, you're obviously gonna sew the front and the back together, right sides together, so the face touching the back and the design on the inside. Sew along the edge, leaving small gaps for the arms and legs to poke through, and a big gap at the top, returning the whole thing right side out and to add stuffing later. I left the gap at the top rather than the bottom, in case the stitching to close it back up at the end looks sloppy. It would still be covered by the hat anyway. You can pre-mark your limb placement and stop and backstitch it every gap, or do one run all the way around and use a seam ripper to pick just a couple stitches to fit the limbs. Once you have the body all sewn together, we're going to turn it inside out so that the face is on the outside again. Then we'll make our skeleton. Here I think I just have 2 pipe cleaners doing the face structure. Then I made loops on the ends of each of them. All you do is just bend and twist to lock. Bend and twist to lock. Then I shove that structure into the body, shoving the limbs through the gaps we left in the perimeter seams. Slip the end of the limb into the loop of the structure, and then basically I do that same kind of loop lock with the limb. For the hands, I just searched on YouTube how to make bird legs out of pipe cleaners. I don't know if this is the exact video, but this should give you an idea. And all 4 limbs have that same shape, but the feet have a little bit extra curvature. And then on one arm limb, I just poke the stem of the wand right through one of the finger loops. And here I'm removing that secret pocket out of the back panel. Can't remember if it was because it was puckering weird or if I needed the space to reach in and like fix the skeleton some more. I don't really remember, but I did end up cutting it out and just replacing it with Velcro. See, here's the arm gap where the limb is shoved through. And the reason that I make a base structure instead of just, shoving them in and gluing is so that the limbs can't be just tugged at by accident. I wanted this doll to be squishy and torturable, just like Anzu and Riri's antics in the anime. So I wanted the doll to be able to take a bit of a beating without falling to pieces. And removing glue from the equation seemed a lot cleaner and easier to fix if something did go wrong. Once you're done adjusting the pipe cleaners, fill the inside with whatever stuffing material you prefer. Polyfill, pillow stuffing, beads, fabric scraps, whatever. I like to use serger scraps with polyfill to cushion any hard lumps. Just be careful packing around the center structure to keep it mostly in the middle. By the end of all this, you should end up with a weirdly shaped potato with chicken legs and arms. If you want a totally smooth perimeter without those pull wrinkles, you need to do a more complicated pattern with more body pieces or add darts. I wanted to keep this project as simple as possible, and the clothes cover and draw attention away from the wrinkles anyway. Now, starting with the hat, for the brim you'll need to cut 2 circular donut shapes out of your hat fabric and 1 out of some sort of structural material such as interfacing, or in my case, cardstock paper. If you used interfacing fabric, you'll need to attach that to one of your hat fabric layers. Otherwise, just sew the 2 brim pieces together, right sides together, along the whole outer edge along the perimeter. Then flip inside out via the donut's hole. If you used interfacing, it should be sandwiched by the 2 rim layers. If you're using a separate structural piece, like I did, stuff that in between the attached rim pieces through the same donut hole. For the top, first add the star to the right side of the fabric. We'll talk more about the stars when we get to the cape. And if you're using interface, attach it to the opposite side. The structural material for the cone part of the hat does not need to be the same full height as the hat material. Point gets chopped off. Fold the whole cone piece over, encasing the decorative star side, and sew the full length of the hat. Mark out the top of your cone structure piece, then gather the difference in the seam allowance. Turn it inside out so that the stars are back on the outside, and stuff your structure piece up into the hat. To attach the 2 hat pieces, match the inside donut hole of the brim to the bottom edge of the cone. When patterning, make sure they measure exactly the same so they match and there are no wrinkles with gathering. If using interfacing, sew both brim layers to the cone with the seam allowance on the underside. If using auxiliary pieces, only sew the top layer of the brim to the cone. To attach the structural pieces to the brim and the cone, wait to insert the cone structural piece. Cut small notches at the base and flatten them out. May need to factor in notch allowance into the cone structure's height during patterning. After the hat fabric is sewn together, insert the notched cone structure up through the brim hole into the cone of the hat and attach the flattened notches to the underside of the brim structure with tape. Hand sew the bottom layer of the brim to tack the hat directly to Riri's head. Also make little ears to attach to the top of the brim. They also get a little stuffing and then are hand sewn to the hat. And to make the cape, basically make a miniature pillow. There's a seam straight down the center in the back and then up top. Then I fill it with a little bit of stuffing and close up this opening. Then gather and secure the center. I used my Cricut machine to cut a bunch of these stars out of holographic iridescent iron-on foil vinyl, but I ended up peeling them all off because they were too large. It made the cape too structured and interrupted the fabric's natural drape and flow. They were also going to be too large around the top part of the hat. You can see all the iron-on residue that I did actually have to scrub pretty hard to remove. I think the next set of stars ended up being too small, but it's fine. I may go back in later and rehem the cape just to make the stars spacing a little bit less awkward. But being a little bit inaccurate isn't the end of the world. For the cape itself, you just make a long curved shape and gather it up, and then you take a strip that will go all the way around to the front and sew that together. See, there's a gathering, and I hid the raw edge, hemmed everything down with a zigzag stitch along the curved hem and just plain straight stitch on the sides, and then you'll have the bow. Another problem I had was this is actually stretch fabric from my Starfire cosplay, and actually the body of Riri was fabric from my 707 cosplay. The stretch fabric is not so compatible with this kind of iron-on material, but the outfit wasn't going to be stretching so hard around like a real solid moving body, but I wasn't too concerned about the lack of full range of stretch. So here's Riri so far, and now here's with K and hat. Then don't forget to add the ears. Now we're gonna start in on the wand. Here I have a lot of references. See, these wands are all different colors in all of these references, so I ended up looking at a lot of different material for the base of the wand. I really like this color and effect of this semi-transparent sheer gold paper on some peach colored vinyl, but in the end I ended up liking this coral color from a blank greeting card pack. And here's the basic plan for the star. Here's a longer video about how to make one of these 3D stars, but you see, when you do the origami, it leaves this like extra crease that disrupts the aesthetic. And then what I ended up doing once I figured out what size I like, on plain paper, follow the folding instructions starting with the square piece all the way up to trimming. After cutting, I unfold the pentagon we're left with and trace that onto the real cardstock on the back side. From there, use a pentagon symmetry to fold it in half in all 5 directions, then follow the rest of the folding instructions to form the star points. I made so many of these stars out of white paper squares of all different sizes to get the star to be a size I like, especially in proportion to the face. It's a lot of trial and error, but it's also good practice for the heavier cardstock. You can see the creases left on like the cardstock, and that was kind of gnarly, versus the ones where I started on a separate paper. Of course, you'll need to make 2 of the stars, and I use a glue stick on the tabs we folded back to attach both halves, and I used some washi tape to hold it together while the glue dried. And then I ended up using the origami creased star as a test, try out different designs with a yellow paint marker. And here I use that gold paper and this coral vinyl. I really like the sharp creases of this version, but when I went in to add the glitter later on, the vinyl made it really lent. See, here's what I mean. Even though the creases were still sharp, the whole thing lost its form when the paper or the vinyl got too saturated. But I wanted to use the glitter, so we went with the cardstock. What I did for the sticker stem part of the wand was I bent the end of a black pipe cleaner into a geometric shape that would fit in between the 2 star pieces and glued them together directly over the end shape. The geometric shape prevents the end of the pipe cleaner from being tugged out of place without extra messy glue. The 2 stars should still be flushed together at all 5 points at all 10 tab pairs, even with the stem poking out in a small gap between. And here's me checking the test star in direct sunlight. And like I said, I've really liked this effect, but I also wanted the chunky glitter because it was a little bit more aesthetically on brand, a little bit gaudy, a little bit silly. Here's just my general explanation, blabbing all about it on Instagram. It's the vinyl and the gold. There's the glitter paint on the peach coral cardstock. For the leaves, I made a template with some scrap paper that I traced onto plain white cardstock. I didn't have green cardstock and I didn't want to buy anything else new, so I used a neon green Sharpie to color the white cardstock on both sides of the traced area. Then I used black Sharpie to draw the leaf veins and outline, and after cutting them out, I went back in around the outline. I attached the leaves to the wand, not very securely, with just a tiny piece of black painter's tape because I knew I was going to roughhouse the doll for the video. So in case anything got too damaged, I wanted to be able to easily take the wand apart to replace the damaged parts. Later, I may reinforce the leaves, sort of pseudo-laminate them with clear packaging tape and glue that to the wand with super glue or a dab of hot glue. And here is my finished Riri doll. I think the doll turned out pretty cute and was a fun addition to my cosplay. My goal for my Anzu cosplay and Riri doll was to put everything together with clothes and materials I already had. I think for both my costume and Riri, the most I spent on new material was for the star part of the wand. I hope this this helps or gives you some ideas on how to get started on making your own Riri Plush doll. If you end up making your own, tag me so that I can see.